What's up guys? Today we've got the successor to EPSON 6040 home theater projector. You guessed it, the 6050. If you're at all familiar with the 6000 lineup, these are EPSON's top home theater projectors that are available from integrators and the custom install market. The 6050 is dedicated home theater friendly as it does come in a black housing as opposed to its close twin, the 5050, which comes in a white housing. If you've been searching for a new upgrade for your home theater space and wondered, besides the color, what's so different between the 5050 and the 6050? Well, having a black housing in a darkened theater room is definitely better than having a white one, since it'll visually disappear and you don't have to risk having light bouncing off of it and reflecting back at the screen. The 5050 is also rated at 1,000,000 to 1 contrast ratio, whereas the 6050 is 1.2 million to 1. It also has a dedicated aspect ratio setting if you're going to be using this projector with an anamorphic lens. If none of that is of interest to you, you can save yourself $1,000 and go with the 5050 for only $3,000. Okay, enough of the comparisons. Let's get it unboxed, check out some of the settings, and I'll give you some of my impressions on how it performs. Inside, we get a back panel cable cover which has adjustable feet on the bottom. This also doesn't come with the 5050, so it's exclusive to the 6050. There's an extra bulb rated at 3,500 hours for high, 4,000 for medium, and 5,000 for echo modes. Here's an RPA chief mount, some manuals, the remote control along with the batteries, cable ties, and the power cable. So the 6050UB retails for $4,000 and is EPSON's best bulb-based home theater projector. It's got a rated brightness of 2600 lumens, so it should be exceptionally bright. This is done by using their 3-chip LCD technology. Now, I'm no EPSON expert, so I'll let Carlos, one of EPSON's engineers, explain it.
All of our projectors, like everything from the 660 that we have in our lineup to the 6050, the Pro Cinema that we just announced, they're all 3-chip design. So you wouldn't be compromising in color. We're a company that communicates in color. So we've decided on choosing the right technology for the right application. And when you're setting up a projector at home, we believe brightness is the most important thing, and that's something that you do not want to sacrifice on. And thanks to the 3-chip design, so we're combining all the 3 primary colors, red, green, and blue, together to produce this colorful picture, which you would not find in other type of solutions. So if you're thinking about a 1-chip DLP solution that provides a wide range of resolution as well, they would drop the brightness level of the color. It will only provide you the wide level of brightness, but not the color side of it. And then when you look at solutions that are like 4K native, like the one that Sony provides, you look at the brightness rating of those projectors, they start at 1500 lumens. And then they increase their price significantly if you want to go from 15 to 18 or 20 or 2000 or 2200 lumens. We're offering in our 4K solution projectors for home 2600 lumens on the ones that we just announced on the 6050 and the 5050. And 2400 on the 4010 and 4050 that we introduced in September last year. So basically, on a home environment in which you need more brightness because of the light settings that you have in your house, in your living, or where you set up the projector, plus if you consider HDR and how important it is to have powerful brightness to produce a wide range of color and saturation, is that all of that is what drives us to make a decision to use our advanced form of pixel shifting to produce that 4K experience.
Like you mentioned, this is a pixel shifting 4K projector, so this is actually a native 1080p projector that will shift each pixel diagonally to double HD resolution. Now, taking a look around the 6050, we have a centrally mounted 15-element glass lens with motorized lens shift. This is flanked by air vents on the left and right side. There's also a removable filter right under the removable vent cover. Moving over to the side, we get the power and source button, along with manual controls under a slide-over door. Around back is an optical HDMI port, and one of the biggest changes from the outgoing 6040 is full bandwidth HDMI 2.0 18 gig support. This will let the projector accept 4K HDR at 60 Hz. The older models were capped at 4K 24. There's a USB input and a service port, LAN, PC, RS-232 ins, along with the trigger output. On the bottom are multiple mounting points if you're using the included chief mount or some other brand. There's also adjustable feet if you're placing this on a flat surface. Alright, now if you guys have been following the channel at all, you might know that my reference projector is the Sony 695ES. It's a native 4K projector as opposed to being an enhanced 4K pixel shifting projector. So that'll be my reference point when I'm giving you guys my thoughts and impressions. You might think it's unfair to judge a $4,000 unit to a $10,000 one, but you guys might be surprised at the outcome. As for the projection surface, I'll be using this with a painted white wall. I'm just kidding, I'm not. I'll be using this with a Stewart Film Screen Studio Tech 100, which is a reference quality screen with a gain of 1.0. The projector will also be paired with an Oppo 203 4K Blu-ray player. Full disclosure, I'm not a professional TV/projector reviewer and calibrator. I'm just an audio and video enthusiast, but I'm sure you can find someone on YouTube with those credentials. Alright, so in startup, you get the EPSON splash screen. You can see here it does take a few seconds to get warmed up. Now there are a ton of settings here, so I'm not going to hit on every single one of them. Okay, here we have the image settings. Keep in mind that this projector is capable of reaching 100% of the P3 color space that's used to master most of the 4K content out there. So that is pretty impressive, but you will have to use the Digital Cinema preset to achieve that. I'm going to quickly touch on each of these presets, but I'll go back later and take a closer look later on in the video. We have Dynamic, Bright Cinema, Natural, Cinema, Black and White Cinema, Digital Cinema, and some presets for when watching 3D content. Here we have some standard picture adjustments. You can tweak color temp and grayscale. Here are some presets for image enhancement. These are basically sharpening presets for 4K enhanced material. We'll take a closer look at it here using no preset. I don't know if you can tell, but with it off, it looks very clean and smooth. As we move up, the image does get sharper, but as the presets go up, you can see some ringing, especially if you keep your eye on this area here at the bottom. You're really just over sharpening it. And the higher the preset, the more visible the pixels get. For me personally, I like to either keep it off or at preset 1, but this is going to be a personal preference kind of thing. Of course, if you want, you can always manually adjust the super resolution and the detail enhancement to your liking. Here we have some more advanced settings that I wouldn't mess with unless you have the proper calibration tools. Here's the iris adjustment. I just kept this wide open for all my viewing, but if your projector is too bright, you can always close it down. For power consumption, you have high, medium, and echo. High will give you the brightest output but limit lamp life to 3,500 hours. Medium is 4,000 and echo is 5,000 hours. For my 100-inch screen, I found medium and echo to be perfectly acceptable. Although for bigger screen sizes and HDR content, you find high mode might be better suited. Auto iris is that dynamic iris, which will help to enhance those contrast levels. Under aspect ratio, you do get settings for use with an anamorphic lens, which is great for lens users. These settings here, you'll probably just want to keep them on auto. Now this is the HDR slider. This is something you'll have to mess around with to find acceptable performance for highlight and shadow detail. You don't want your brights to be too overblown and blacks to be crushing detail. Here's a scene from Sully. At default, it's going to be at an 8. Now if you keep your eye here on the ball of flame, you'll see that it's really bright, but it's also very blown out and it's clipping highlight detail. As we move the slider up, you'll see there's more definition and detail in the bright area. You also want to adjust to where the darker parts are still visible, like this area here. You don't want to go too high because then you won't see anything. Under the Digital Cinema preset and at a 14, I found this worked best for this particular movie. Do you take a hit on brightness when you're using the slider? Sure you do, but you should be able to find a common ground between a bright image with good shadow and specular detail. Okay, for video range, you're probably best to keep this on auto unless you have this connected to your PC, so this setting could be different for that. For EDID, I had to keep this on normal, otherwise I couldn't see the Oppo. Alright, now the rest of these are really just setup and placement settings. I'll zip through some of these, so just pause if you need to see something. Okay, here's the info page that'll give you source information, lamp life, and software version. So you probably want to know how this projector performs. Well, this is the first time I've had an EPSON in my theater. I've had Projos from Panasonic, Optoma, BenQ, JVC, and Sony, so I like to think I've got some kind of frame of reference. And this is right up there. Now, right off the bat, I know this is a 4K pixel shifter. There's folks out there that say they can't see a noticeable difference between native 4K and 4K upscaling. For me personally, at my first row seating distance at about 7 feet, I could see the pixel structure. If you're not a stickler for image quality and you haven't experienced a true 4K projected image, then you might not notice it. The other 4K enhanced projector I had was a JVC, and between those two, I'd have to give the nod to the JVC for having a slightly more smoother image. So less visible pixels, although it did cost more. Now it might sound like I'm saying the EPSON has a crappy pixelized image, which absolutely it doesn't. I'm really just nitpicking, plus I'm trying to tell you what I can see in comparing it to a true 4K projector. At a distance of 12 feet back, which is at my second row of seating, I couldn't see any pixels. It was just a very smooth, clean image. The biggest thing and probably the most impressive thing about the 6050 is how bright it is, especially with 4K HDR material. With Aquaman, which is what I think is the best demo for eye-popping HDR, the 6050 was clearly brighter than Sony 695. This is in the dynamic mode. It was actually kind of overwhelmingly bright in my room. If you drop the EPSON in digital cinema mode, then things start to even out a bit for brightness. Now, when you put it in digital cinema, it puts a filter in the path to give you that rated 100% P3 color space. So if you were to go from dynamic to digital cinema, you will see a pretty substantial dip in brightness. You could always put the projector on high if you're using the echo mode to offset some of that dimming. I also threw in some movies that I knew had some color banding issues, like this scene right here in Sully. You can sort of make it out in the video where the sky changes color. I figured since this has a wide color spectrum, it should be able to handle those gradations really well. And I must say that it did look a little better than Sony in this regard. Otherwise, right out of the box, using the digital cinema setting, I thought color and contrast were excellent with great image depth and definition. As I pointed out earlier, you can get some really fantastic specular highlights and shadow detail by adjusting the HDR slider. Look how good that shadow detail is here in Blade Runner 2049. Unfortunately, setting and forgetting the HDR slider isn't a thing, so you'll probably find yourself tweaking this for different movies. It's not EPSON's fault, it's just how these HDR movies are mastered. As far as detail, it rendered the finest little nuances just as good as the Sony. However, if you were to get up close and personal to the screen, that's where the Sony is going to start to take over. But again, at about 12 feet back, it wasn't much of an issue. For 3D playback, sorry, I didn't try that out with my limited time with it. Maybe next time. Noise-wise, in echo mode, it was really quiet. I'd say it was on par with the Sony. In high mode, it's noticeable, but I suppose if you've got a large enough space, then the noise could be negligible. I've got a smaller space, so using it on high was distracting. Also, I want to mention that if you're coming from a JVC E-Shift, you might notice that E-Shift sound when it's upscaling. On the EPSON, with 4K material, I didn't notice a change in sound at all, so good job EPSON. So should the EPSON 6050 make it on your short list of home theater upgrades? If you're a previous EPSON owner, then absolutely. You'll be getting full 4K 60 support. I know the step-down model is $1,000 cheaper, but if you add in the extra 1-year warranty for a total of 3 years, the extra bulb and the ceiling mount, I think the extra $1,000 is a fair asking price. The next logical step would be the Sony 295, which is yet another $1,000 more than the 6050. You'll get a native 4K projector, but you're talking about 1500 lumens compared to EPSON's 2600. That's a pretty huge boost in brightness. A slightly crisper image, albeit a bit dimmer, or a very clean and bright image. You're gonna have to weigh the pros and cons for that one yourself. But overall, if I didn't already own a projector, then the 6050 would certainly satisfy my 4K HDR needs. Is it gonna knock out those higher end offerings from Sony and JVC? No, it's not. But for less than half the price, you could overlook some of the shortcomings. In the world of high quality home theater projectors, which is a niche category, $4,000 for everything you're getting, plus its performance, I think is a fair value. So if you're starting out in home theater and want to get away from those tiny TV sets, I think the 6050 should be on your short list. Well, alright guys, let us know in the comments if you're in the market for a projector, and what are you guys looking for? If you want to grab the EPSON or anything I've mentioned in the video, then I'll leave some links for them down below in the description. Thanks for watching, don't forget to give us a like if you found the video useful, and if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you guys again in the next one.